I'd like to thank the grace of heaven, the virtues of the masters, and the compassion and mercy of the grand predecessors, senior transmitters, lectures, temple masters, and everyone for giving me this opportunity to learn to talk about chapter 71 of the Tao Te Ching. It's
no screen.
Way Good the Virtue. It's one of the shorter chapters, so hopefully we'll be done in about an hour or so. Of the whole classic, chapter 71, without fault. Now, there's a reason why we translate it as fault as opposed to, this word. I mean, it could mean fault too, but normally it means sickness or illness. Okay, but anyway, we'll talk about it in detail. So it's short. It's only, I think it's 7 phrases. It's divided into 3 sections. The first section is the introduction, talking about, what's to know, what is to know. So that's, that could be, and what's to know and not know, and to not know, but think is bad. Okay, and then the third and fourth phrases talk about how one can be without fault, not without sickness or illness, but without fault. And then he talks about how sages are without fault. Okay, all right. Why sages are without fault. Okay, so it's I think it's the 4th or 5th shortest chapter in the entire classic. So it's very quick, but it's short, but it has a lot of. I mean, it seems very simple, the superficial meaning, but it has a very, very high level meaning. All right, I mean, it's a deep meaning. Okay, you can say metaphysical, as a matter of fact. But I don't want to get into too much of metaphysics, but it does. By the end of this chapter, when we do the conclusion, not even conclusion, first section, you'll see that it kind of parallels a previous chapter that we went through already. All right. Okay. So let's go to the outline. Okay. So without fault. Okay. So the first section is to know that you do not know is highest. To not know but think you know is flawed. Okay. So anyway, all right. So, okay, the basic meaning of this is that Lao Tzu is talking from, remember, we've gone through so many chapters already, especially, so many chapters, 70 chapters. And, there's always one recurring theme. One of the recurring themes is always about humility. Okay, humility, being low, right? Being the valley, right? Being the rivers and the oceans, be like water, etc., right? All the previous chapters. So once again, he's reiterating it, but he's talking it from a standpoint of knowing, okay, to know or knowing or even knowledge, okay. So this is an attitude of humility because one recognizes one's own ignorance and realizes that there's still much more to learn. So this is very basic, right? It's like, kindergarten level, right? I mean, come on. I mean, right? You don't know. You realize that you don't know, so you need to learn, right? You need to know something, right? You need to know, right? You need to learn, right? So that's very basic. I mean, but Lao Tzu is not really talking at the basic level, which we will get to. He's talking about much higher level. There's a high, but this is the practical. This is the practical aspect of the Tao Te Ching, right? Remember in chapter, chapter 70, holding J, he says, my words are easy to understand, very easy to practice, right? So it's easy to understand that, right? At the superficial level. Yeah, it's, if I know that I don't know something, then I should, I should try to, if I recognize my ignorance, right, then I should try to, overcome that ignorance by learning, right? By studying, learning, whatever. Okay. Okay. So that's very basic. All right. Then on the flip side, though, he said, but if you don't know something, but you think or you claim to know, then that's a sickness. So then that's flawed. Then that means it's it's no longer honesty, right? You're no longer being honest to yourself. That's arrogance or your ego speaking. So that's why it's an attitude of humility. Lao Tzu is advocating that, if you really don't know anything, if you really don't know it, don't say you know it, right? Okay, so another understanding is this is a recognition that no one knows everything. Even the smartest, most intellectual, or whatever, person, right? They don't know everything. We'll talk about that in summary section 1, and we'll go into a little bit more detail. But okay, and that's where it goes into the higher level aspect. But anyway, so that one needs to learn from different sources, right? Confucius talk about if there's 3 people that I'm walking among with, one of them could be my teacher, right? Same idea. Okay, same idea. So now, so this is attitude of humility, of recognizing that you don't know everything, even if you're the smartest guy, even if you have the highest IQ, or even if you're an Einstein, a rocket scientist, a brains, whatever. Okay, whatever. All right, so it doesn't matter. But conversely, the opposite of humility would be arrogance. Okay, so if you claim to know, even though you don't know, then that's your arrogance. Okay, now, in the West, they already have that tradition. Well, it started way back. West, Greeks, the Greek, European, because when one recognizes one's own ignorance, it is also a sign of wisdom. You can say wisdom. Okay. Now that's what's similar to what Socrates said. Okay. He didn't say, I only know that I know nothing. That was attributed to him by Plato. By Plato in the Republic. But he said something similar. Along those lines. He didn't say he know. He did claim to know something, but he did say that he doesn't know everything. Okay, so Socrates believed that he knew nothing, so he was only wiser than others because he was the only person who recognized his own ignorance. That's what he meant. Okay, that's what Socrates meant. All right. So anyway, that's a little bit of philosophical history. But anyway, okay. So even though you know everything, but you do not display your knowledge, everything is kept within. That's a little bit more, a more advanced level of understanding what Lao Tzu was saying. He said, so that's a deeper, you can say, a deeper application of humility, right? So even though you may know everything, even though you're the smartest guy, okay, even though whatever, you have the highest IQ, whatever, okay, but you don't flaunt it, display, and that will talk. We'll get to a little bit of that in chapter 72, right? 72. Okay, how the sages, behave. Okay, even though they know, they may know a lot. Okay, but anyway, all right, or even everything. All right, so that's okay. Now, there's a deeper level. Okay, so this is all pretty pedantic, right? Meaning very like basic education level stuff, right? You don't know, we're not born, knowing everything. So we have to recognize that, and then we have to try to address that, and by learning something. And also, if we don't know something, we don't claim, we are honest, we don't claim to know it, right? So so we're being humble, right? Okay, all that. Okay, so that's fine. All right, but there's a higher level, okay, and which was okay. So the first word of to know, see he has here, right? So he had here, okay? So he had 2 words for know, all right? Okay. And this is kind of symmetric here, but anyway, okay, it's anyway, okay, but it's here, okay, so in the first phrase. Okay, where is it? Okay, where are we? Here, okay, all right. So those first 2, the 2 words for zi, that means to know, okay, or knowledge. It could be a noun or a verb, okay. Now, in this case, it's a verb, okay. It means that you know all, okay. Well, yeah, you know all. I guess is that a verb? Yeah, to know all. Yeah, to know everything. Yeah, that's a verb. Okay, but anyway, but what you express outwardly, you do not know. That's the second know. Okay, that is the highest level. Okay, so that's what it means. Okay, all right. Now this last word, this last word, this being. Okay, that means literally it means sickness or illness. Physical sickness. It could mean mental illness, but anyway. Okay, so all right, so that's this more typical general modern definition. So modern definition is it's a disease, sickness, a malady. It could also be a defect or fault, to be sick, okay, to do harm. But in ancient, it's more specific. It's not talking about sickness. It's more fault or flaw, because like human errors, character flaws, okay, or being, kind of like in a metaphorical sense, being sick or defective in some aspect of one's thinking, right? The term 毛病 means, fault, defect, bad habits, problem, right? 改毛病, correct our bad habits or correct our, shortcomings, defects. Okay. All right. So, all right. Now let's talk about the second line. Okay. So just understand what that means. I mean, how it's applied here. It applies that to here. At the end, it has a different higher level, different meaning too, different level meaning. Okay. But for now, we'll use this basic level. All right. So the second phrase, the second phrase, half of this line is to not know but think you know is flaw. It just means to not know something but assuming you know is flaw, right? It's a flaw, okay, or dishonesty, right? So that's a flaw. That's a wrong, right? That's a defect, okay. All right. So does not mean you do not. Now, some translation or some commentary said does not. Now, the second half, now, to not know but think you know is flawed, right? So that's how we translate it. Some translate differently. Some takes it to Lao's meaning as you do not know that you know something, or that you actually or that you actually know more than you think you know. See, so some people interpret that way. It doesn't mean that. Okay, and you'll see that towards the end. But anyway, all right. So in this chapter, the last word being does not mean disease, illness, or sickness, but rather defect, flaw, or shortcoming, like a problem with one's mind. Okay, so it does not mean presuming to know is a disease. You see, some translation comes out of that. Knowledge, to know knowledge, to have knowledge or know is a disease, it's sickness. Okay, so that's, or ignoring knowledge is sickness. Okay, so that's the flip side. Okay, so it doesn't mean that. I mean, okay. So some translations, just be aware, some translations say that. Okay, so all right. So this phrase, let's see. Okay, this phrase is the opposite of the mental attitude of the first phrase, which is the opposite of a humble attitude. Remember, the first phrase is to know that you do not know is the highest. So that's even though it's he said it's the highest, that means it's the highest level of knowing, of recognition that, hey, you realize, that, hey, you don't know everything, right? So that's, so similar to what Socrates. So that's very wise. So that's why Lao Tzu says it's the highest. It's high. Okay, and we'll define that a little bit later. It'll become clear in a little bit later. But anyway, okay. So that's humble. But the second phrase is to not know but think you know is flaw. That means you're arrogant. Okay, that's the opposite. So he's putting the two together, the yin and yang, the pair, the opposite pair. One is humility and the other one is arrogance, right? Okay, the second one represents arrogance. The first phrase represents you're humble because you realize that, hey, you don't know everything, right? So therefore, you should, strive to know more. Okay, well, anyway, okay, so that's a very noble and a humble attitude or view. Whereas the second phrase is, hey, if you don't know anything, not know anything, if you don't know something and yet you claim to know it, then that's arrogant, right? That's arrogant. Okay, so where you do not really know, that's the arrogance, but you still assume or think that you know. Now, where does this arrogance come from? It's from ignorance, the lack of awareness. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll do a little. Okay, now some people translated the second phrase also means to presume to know what you do not is sick. To presume to know what you do not is sick, or not knowing that you do not know is a sickness. So that's wrong. Okay, so that's not that. All right. Okay. Now, on the second line, okay, Tao cultivators, Lao Tzu is also addressing Tao cultivators, that we have to use reflection and critical self-examination to be more self-aware. It all comes back to self-aware, okay, self-aware, to make sure that we do not fall into this trap, that Tao cultivators do not fall into this trap of, ignorance, right, or arrogance arising from ignorance, they do not wish to assume that they are knowledgeable. So that's part of that, do not display, right? That you know everything, right? So that's part of that, all right? So you don't want to wish to assume or to appear, right? Assume is initially within you. Then you express that outwardly, right? You manifest that's okay. So now these two phrases, what Lao Tzu wrote, is very similar to what Confucius said, all right? I mean, very similar, okay? He said something. He said, this is in the Analects, he said to Zilu, okay, Zilu, that's one of his major disciples, okay? He said the following. He said, when you know a thing, to hold that you know it, and when you do not know a thing, to admit that you do not know it, that is wisdom, okay? Some people translate as knowledge too, okay, or knowing, okay? So anyway, okay? I mean, even though that word that is typically translated as know, to know, or knowledge, but it also could be translated as wisdom, okay? So that's what Confucius said. So it's very similar. Now, when you know a thing, to hold that you know it, okay? So that's there's a high-level definition which we will, interpretation that seems similar to the first phrase that we will talk about just very shortly at the conclusion of this section, okay? All right. And then when you do not know a thing, to admit that you do not know it, that's also being honest, right? Being honest, being humble, right? Also, to being honest and honest with yourself, right? Okay. So that's wisdom. So that's very similar to what Socrates, implied, right? I mean, said, all right. So, there we have it. And it's kind of interesting that Confucius and Socrates, I mean, they're not necessarily contemporary. I think Confucius came a little bit before Socrates, but anyway, okay. Sometime roughly the same time, within about 100 years or so of each other, 100, 150 years of it. That's very interesting. Okay. So you can find this quote in the Analects, all right, on book 2, governance, or on government, or Wei Zhen. Okay. Anyway. All right, so we're gonna let's go to the okay, so here, okay, so Tao cultivators, authentic, true Tao cultivators are lifelong learners, because throughout life they always know they do not know everything, right? Whereas those who are ignorant think they know when they really do not know, because that comes from ignorance, okay? So to know but think you know is a character flaw, not a disease, okay? Not a sickness, okay? Or illness or whatever, okay? To not know but assume you know is a common problem or flaw. I think most of us are like that, have said something like that, or have those kind of views, in their life, sometime in their lives. I mean, come on, we all have that, all right? So that's all due to lack of awareness, okay? So let's go to Appendix A and check it out, okay? So that's some examples of this lack of awareness, all right? Okay, all right, lack of awareness, or really lack of clarity. You can say lack of clarity, okay? All right, lack of clarity, all right? So that's lack of awareness and lack of clarity. All right, okay, so now most of us, or we've encountered, I'm gonna say most of us, some of us, there are a few, some of us, we have certain, I don't want to say oddness, peculiarities, yeah, special, characteristics. Sometimes, we have, certain, I don't say habits, but, just something that's a little bit unique or different, okay? Like I call it idiosyncrasy. So that's 特异性, okay? So we sometimes, like some people have this quirk. They love to debate. They love to be very direct and challenge you, on everything, on just about anything, all sorts of topics or whatever, okay? On anything. And they do that not necessarily out of aggression or being offensive. They genuinely like to learn. They love to learn. So they have this quirk. So some people are like that. Okay, some people. I mean, a lot of times I see them, in these Ivy Leagues places or Ivy halls or whatever. Anyway, okay, it doesn't matter. But I see that in those type of people in business world too. But so some people may think that that's a lovable quirk, that makes you who you are. It's a trait, right? It's a particular. So they may say, or you may say, I'm always down for a good debate because I always seek the truth. I'm always wanting to learn new things. So they behave like that. Now, you may think to yourself that that's a good thing. That's a positive thing. But your approach is probably, needs improvement or leaves a lot to be desired, because other people, may not say it, but they think that you could be annoying or egoistic jerk. Okay. So, in the back of the mind, they may not say it to you because it could be your boss or whoever. It doesn't matter. Okay. So we got to be careful. Okay. So that's one example of lack of awareness. You might, take pride in that. Hey, I have this quirk, that's, I'm not being offensive or anything. I just like to challenge things and, because I like to learn, that's how I learn, blah, blah. But you know what? Other people may not say to your face, but they think you're a jerk. Okay. Or, you're acting like a jerk. Okay. So that's, that's something to be aware of. Okay. All right. Now, okay. Here's the thing. This means if you're not, this is just one example. You can think of many different examples. I'm just giving you one example as an illustration. So this means that you may not realize that you are the cause of your own problems. That's the problem. That's the fault. That's where the fault comes in, or the flaw comes in, is that you don't realize that you are the cause of your own problems. So this lack of awareness or clarity gives rise to confusion. It'll lead to confusion, where confusion creates karma, where karma leads to suffering, which leads to an endless cycle or vicious cycle of suffering and confusion. So it becomes a vicious cycle. So that's, if you lack this awareness or clarity in a particular behavior or mindset, et cetera, or way of thinking, et cetera, then that's the potential where it could end up. Okay, that it gives rise to confusion, confusion causing karma, karma leads to suffering, and it becomes a vicious cycle. Okay, so that's one thing that we have to be clear, is be very careful. All right. Okay, so when people are, when they are not aware of themselves, and this is the problem, when they do not see a fault as a fault, that's becomes section 2. Okay, am I going ahead of stuff? Okay, no, that's okay. Okay, I'm kind of like leading into section 2, but that's okay. This is how people do not know why they cause their own problems. They can't figure out, because they don't realize that's a fault, that's a flaw, that's something that's not right, or it's a defective. So to not know but assume is a common problem. All right. So another common manifestation is, some people love to point out shortcomings or find flaws in others while blissfully unaware of your own. Now, I didn't put it down here, but there's a very famous quote from Jesus. I think it's in Matthew's. I think it might be in John too, but anyway, definitely in Matthew's. I think Jesus said, I think it was Jesus that said it, that because I think he was talking about his disciples, that he had to be careful. That you see the speck, I think they used the word mote or whatever, mote, dust, speck of dust in thy brother's eyes, okay, but you ignore the log, or you don't see the log in your own eye. Okay, so that's another quote from Jesus, right? So this is very similar, right? That you will pick out the slightest, tiniest fault or shortcomings of others, while you ignore your huge fault or defect, okay, or flaw, right? So the way to get around that, or this lack of awareness, is to self-reflect. We must self-reflect, have more self-introspection, okay, and that's how we can become self-aware. Okay, so we need to and ask, what might be some of the issues in your life that you may be blind to? Okay, so this is where we really have to put some diligent effort. All right, this is how we improve ourselves. Okay, because this will also lead us to realize that, hey, we're really ignorant. We don't know everything. Okay, so we have to be careful. All right, so that's okay. So that's now let's go back to section to section 1. Okay, let's go to the key and then we'll go to the summary for part 1. So this tells us that the highest level, let's see, where is it? Okay, right here. Okay, this tells us that the highest level of a person is like this. You know everything, but when you express or display yourself, you do not know anything, which leads to an attitude of humility. In contrast, there are many who do not know, but claim to know, or claim they know, which leads to arrogance. So that's the two, the two, you can say the two extremes. You can say extreme. I don't say two extremes, but the two opposites, the flip side. Okay, so that's what Lao Tzu wants to point out. So he said, so Lao Tzu is saying that. Okay, so the thing is this: for cultivators, for those who are cultivators, we know, okay, we may know things, right? We may know certain things, okay, but what they express or display are very common and ordinary. They don't, like self-display or flaunt or show off, etc., or boast. Okay, none of that. Okay, so they will not flaunt, show off. They will not let others know how much they know within, okay, inside them. Okay, everything is kept within. So this is the most ideal way of interacting with people, of displaying yourself to others, even though you may know a lot, okay, or even everything. Now, so how can you be without fault? Okay. So that is by knowing, but do not display that you know. So that's how you can be without fault. Okay, so that's how you can be without fault, by even though you know, but you don't display that you know. So that's being very humble, right? That's being very humble. Okay. Now, okay, let's go to the very now. Okay, so this is all still pretty basic level. It may be intermediate because it talks about humility. Okay, about being humble. Now, for reasons why knowing, that's the internal aspect inside, but not displaying or showing or saying that's the external, it's the highest, right? That's what the first phrase says. Okay, there are reasons for that. Okay, there are reasons. So now we're going to go to the higher level, okay, and to the highest actually. Okay, so let's go into there. Okay, part 1. All right, so here now I just picked out 3, but yeah, these are the 3 most fundamental. There could be more, but I just picked out 3. I just use 3 reasons. 3 reasons why to know, but not to display or not to show or not to claim or whatever. Okay, it's the highest, right? That's what said, right? Okay, to know that you do not know is the highest, right? Okay. Now that's what the do not know means. Do not know means not to display okay, so that's to know, but do not know is the highest. Okay, so it becomes, okay, all right. So there are 3 qualities or manifestations that reflect or are congruent to the Tao. Okay, the first one, which we talked about fairly extensively, is humility. Right, it's the opposite of arrogance, right? And this has been repeated once again, right? Here I'm just giving you two previous chapters references. Speaks humbly, place themselves behind. That's from chapter 66, right? Rivers and oceans. Okay, lowers themselves. That's from 4th phrase of chapter 68, non-contention. Okay, so these are examples. Okay, so it contains those qualities, right? Okay, so to know but not to display that is highest. It's because you display or show that you have this quality of this characteristic of humility, this quality of humility. Okay, and that's good. That's a good thing. Okay, so that's one. Also, simplicity. Okay, simplicity. All right, and what's the simplicity embodies? That's being plain. That's being natural, unpretentious, regular or common, and ordinary. So that's even though you know, but you don't flaunt it. You don't say, hey, I'm special because I'm smarter than you, or I know more than you, or etc. Whatever. Okay, so that's still pretty basic, but it's a sign of being simple. Okay, now, and we'll get a little bit more to detail here. Is here. It's here. It's one of the example, previous chapter. Do not wish to be shiny like jade, be dull like rocks. That's simple. That's simplicity. That's being plain, being very plain, ordinary, be ordinary like rocks, right? We talked about that in chapter 39, right? Okay, also, just more recently, last week, therefore the sage wears plain clothes, but holds jade. Okay, so the wears plain clothes means they display, right? Because it's attire is what you could see, right? I mean, you know, it's kind of, it's external, right? So that's from last line of chapter 7, right? So that's an example of that. Now, then, but what's internal? He holds the jade. So there's a meaning, and I think we talked about this last week, right? What the hold the jade means, it's to hold on to the Tao, that or the one. I mean, the one, the Tao, same thing, the unity, okay, within. So by attaining the one, that's the merging of the Tao essence and its functions, right? The essence and the functions, or it's to know the oneness or unity, that's the oneness, that's the merger of the void and the mirror things or infinity. That's called knowing the Tao, okay? That's holding the J, same thing, all right? So that's the second aspect. And this is a very congruent to the Tao. That's what Tao is, okay? Or it's very simplistic. I mean, it's very simplistic. It's simple, plain. It's not, it doesn't claim to be special, right? Okay, anyway, it just is, all right? So plain, all right? Now let's go to the even higher level a little bit, and it's here. The third quality is it's non-attached, non-conditioned. Now, this is very broad because, you know, you can say non-conditional, unconditional, okay? Yeah, it's very broad. But there's one specific aspect of it. It's non-abiding, non-abidance. They say abidance? Is that word? I don't know. Abiding, 无助, okay? It means non-attached. It can say it's close. It overlaps with non-attachment. But, you know, non-abiding is like a form of attachment. You can say that. Yeah, you can say that. Okay, so what is that non-abiding? It's this goes very deep, all right? Very deep. It's the state of knowing. In this case, non-abiding to know, in the non-abiding of not to know. Remember, to know, not to know, what's the first phrase? To know that you do not know, okay? So that's, now it's combining the two now, okay? So to know that you do not know. It's the state of knowing, but it's non-abiding, okay? So that's the state of knowing without thinking or claiming or displaying or showing that you know. Get it? Okay, so that's to know, and to know, but not to know that you do not know. Same thing, okay? To know that, okay? So it gets a little bit higher level. It's a complex. So now we're combining, merging the two, all right? So now that's similar in Buddhism to the concept of the non-consciousness or non-mind is Buddha, okay? So that's non-consciousness, okay? Or non-conscious mind. Some people call it the non-conscious mind or non-mind, okay? So the non-conscious or non-mind means it's the human mind, the human nature mind, okay? The sixth consciousness, right? That's where we do all the processing, right? The mental processing, right? Cognitive processing, right? Okay, so what Buddhism says is that if you have that conscious mind or that cognitive process mind, that's not a Buddha. That's not a Buddha. That's not being a Buddha. That's being a human, okay? That's being, you could be an intellectual, okay? It doesn't matter, okay? That's being a human. So anyway, all right, so now there's a reference to something similar to this notion of non-abidance, okay, or non-abiding, all right? Recall, I mean, this is, I don't know, I don't think this is the best translation, but it's close enough. One should be non-abiding so that one's this mind in this case doesn't mean your human nature mind. It's the self-nature mind. It's true self-mind, okay, arises. So that means your Buddha nature mind, quote unquote, arises, comes out. Or you can say wisdom comes out, okay? So that's from Diamond Sutra, folks, okay? That's a very, very famous, very, very well-known phrase in the Diamond Sutra. Now, so all this, especially on this non-attached or non-conditioned, non-abiding, the non-abiding mind, quote unquote, okay, that's the highest level of, quote, knowing the Tao, unquote, okay? That's what it is. That's when you know the Tao, okay? That's truly to know the Tao because it's no longer, why is that? Because it's no longer an intellectual or knowledge-based knowing. Get it? That's no longer intellectual. or knowledge based. Because right now, what we're saying right now, it's all knowledge or intellectual based. It's all consciousness. It's the consciousness aspect right now. Right now, what we're doing right now, when you're listening to me, when I'm speaking to you, etc., we're using thoughts. We're still using thoughts, human thoughts, okay, to understand or to know, okay, to understand, to know, okay. So the key is you have to be at this state, the non-abiding mind, okay, or we say not. I say non-conditioned. I mean, it's a special case of non-conditioned mind, okay, wu wei. So that's the highest level of knowing, okay. So it's here. I mean, and this gets a little bit metaphysical, but I don't want to talk about it. I mean, too much about it. But anyway, here it is. Okay, here it is. So this non-abiding state of knowing, okay, is the highest state of knowing because it's the state of knowing without effort, without thinking, without remembering or needing reminders, without conscious knowing, without any cognitive processes, neither a priori, this is philosophical term, but it's a Latin term, but it just means that what comes before, okay, that's deductive reasoning, okay, nor a posteriori, that means Latin means what comes after. It's inductive reasoning, okay, knowledge. So it's neither a priori or a posteriori knowledge. So this knowing is beyond conscious or intellectual knowledge. Okay, now, okay, usually a priori, it's used in. I mean, we use a lot. Most of us use it without even, realizing that we're using it. It's deductive reasoning. It's used. I mean, if you want to talk about in the field of education, it's used exclusively in mathematics. That's how you do proofs, mathematical theorems, proofs, etc. Deductive. In practical everyday life, we use this to solve problems, right? Yeah. I have a condition, I have a state, I have a result, and I gotta figure out what are its causes or how, resolve it, right? That's what you do all the time. Or we deduce, like, we're sitting inside, in front of a TV screen by a window, and then we hear, a noise of an engine, going on the road. So we deduce by that, based on experience, knowledge, et cetera, that, hey, it's got to be a car or a motor vehicle is driving and somebody's in it, okay, or something, unless it's, driverless. But anyway, all right. So that's all deductive reasoning. Okay. Now, a posteriori, that's inductively. That's used. We don't use that much, but we do. But it's used mainly in science. That's where empiricism. It's called experience. You have to. In other words, we take. This is taking the general. No. Okay, wait. So deductive is taking the generality and deducing it to a specific cause. Whereas this is the opposite. It's taking some specific events and trying to induce what is its general principle that's underlying it, that gives rise to these specific events. Get it? So that's where the scientific theories comes from, the laws of gravitation, the Newtonian mechanics, relativity, quantum mechanics, etc. Okay, so that's where it comes, right? But this is all intellectual knowledge. It's, so you notice that this makes a yin and yang pair, that, right? It's like the opposites. It's pretty interesting. So what Lao Tzu is saying at the highest level, to know the Tao, or that's knowing the Tao, that's the highest, does not include, it transcends these two, the deductive and inductive reasoning. It actually transcends space-time. But all this intellectual knowledge, conscious knowledge, intellectual, is bound by space and time. Whereas the highest level of knowing the Tao transcends space and time. That's why Buddhism, they say, that's the non-conscious mind is Buddha. Get it? The non-conscious mind is Buddha. Okay? All right. And same thing about, the Diamond Sutra line about be non-abiding. Okay? Same idea. Okay? Be non-abiding. So when you're non-abiding, you transcend space-time. Get it? You transcend this yin and yang. Okay. Anyway. All right. Okay. So I'm sorry. This gets very metaphysical, but it does. So unfortunately, so the highest knowing. Okay. Here. Okay. So the highest level of knowing the Tao, quote unquote, okay, is not to claim, display, show, or think you know it. This is parallel, and we've done something similar to this, parallel, but it's not to know now in chapter 71. In previous chapter, it's different. As a matter of fact, it goes way back. It's about 20-something, 24 chapters ago, 23. This is parallel to the highest level of virtue, which is natural, spontaneous, relaxed, unforced, authentic, and genuine. That's non-abiding, non-conditioned, non-attached, etc. Where you manifest virtue without effort, without thinking, without needing reminders, and without conscious of being virtuous. That's very similar to here, the state of knowing. Okay, so that corresponds to this. Okay, this, if you look at that, and you correspond to about virtue. Okay, all right. So manifest virtue without effort. You know without effort. Okay, you manifest virtue without thinking, without thinking. You manifest virtue without needing reminders. You know without remembering. And you manifest virtue without conscious of being virtuous and without conscious of knowing. Okay, same idea, all right? So this parallel, it came from where? Chapter 38, illustrious virtue, all right? So it came way back, okay? First, now, this gets metaphysical, so just another chapter that really similar to, okay? So anyway, all right, so okay, oops, sorry, let's what happened here? Okay, all right, so because if you could claim to, quote, know the Tao, unquote, means you could also, quote, not know the Tao, unquote, completely. Why? Because the Tao is infinite in its manifestations. So there's no way that you could have infinite knowledge, at least in a human conscious mind, within space and time, bound by space and time, right? Now, there's one of the definitions of knowing everything, infinite. You can say infinite knowledge. What's one of the definitions or one of the words to describe that? It's omniscient, right? Omni means, I don't know, all, complete, total, whatever, all encompassing, all knowing. Okay, that's one of the definitions of God. I mean, that's one of the definitions or one of the character descriptions. I mean, it's really for Buddha too. But anyway, so that's why it's not intellectual. Get it? It's not conscious knowledge. Okay, so by knowing the Tao, quote unquote, and not claiming, displaying, showing, or thinking to know the Tao, this is okay. Here's where we get a little bit very high level. By quote, knowing the Tao, unquote, and not claiming, displaying, showing, or thinking to know the Tao, this is the metaphysical Tao of the Tao. That is unknowable and not unknowable, but which we can realize it in the highest unsurpassed state of awareness, which is to go beyond the conscious state. That's the non-abiding state, okay? So now, remember, we've already talked something similar along these lines. It's parallel. We've done that before, chapter 56. That's parallel to, quote, those who do not know, those who know do not talk, those who talk do not know, right? We talked about that. Chapter 56, right? That's the very first line, okay? Now, in chapter 56, it's talking about knowing and then talking about it. Whereas Lao Tzu here, it's a little bit higher level. It's all more abstract. It says to know and not know, okay? To know and then not know. So that's the higher level. So, but it's parallel. It's similar. Okay. So this is metaphysical. Okay, guys. So I don't want to go too much, but at least you get an understanding of that. Hey, Lao Tzu is also talking about the highest level. Okay. All right. So let's go back. Okay. Let's go back. All right. Let's go to section 2 now, where we're hopefully we're a little bit halfway. Okay. So section 2, only when one recognizes the fault as a fault, so then one can be without fault. Okay, so let's go very quickly. So this is very basic too. All right, so but it has a higher level to understanding. But first, let's talk about the basic. All right. Ooh, why is this? Let's do it down. Okay, good. All right. Okay, so you guys can see everything here. All right. Okay. So it means to see a problem as a problem, the flaw as a flaw, the defect as a defect, etc., etc. Okay, so it just means that to recognize it. Okay, to really recognize, to to have clarity, right? And seeing that, hey, this is really a problem. Okay, so anyway, then if you could see that, then or recognize that, then you can fix the problem, flaw, or defect. So one will no longer have the problem, flaw, or defect. Okay. Now, some translations say it's first you realize you're sick. Yeah, first realize you're sick. Or sages rarely ail or get sick because they hate ills. Okay, so that's wrong. This is totally wrong. It has nothing to do with sickness, okay, or disease. Okay, so that's make you understand, okay, right? Because there's some translations that are like that, okay, and it's very and as a matter of fact, a lot of translations are like that, and that you can tell right off the bat that that's a poor translation, that they don't really understand what the higher level meaning is. Okay, all right. So another meaning of the line is this, is that if you do not know a problem as a problem, then you will persist in the problem, right? So that's the flip side, is that if you don't recognize a problem as a problem, then it's going to continue, right? Obviously, because either you ignore it, or you're not cognizant or not aware. Once again, not aware, lack of awareness, not aware of that is a problem. Okay, so you can only get rid of a problem when you recognize it as a problem, or when you become aware that it's a problem. So now, it doesn't mean if one is sick of sickness, or only by becoming sick of the sickness. That's kind of ridiculous. There's some translations like that, so that's wrong. Okay, so additional meaning is this. This leads to the problem getting bigger and possibly more serious if you don't know that that's a problem, right? By not knowing one's own problems, then that's called a big problem. Okay, now the modern, in the modern definition, okay, the being here is closer matched to illness. That's true, okay, or disease than being sick, because illness can mean disease, whereas being sick has two meanings, right? Being sick can say, one is that physically you are ill, you're sick, okay, that's sick. But sick can also be I would say an attitude. An attitude. An attitude is that you're being fed up at the end of one's tolerance or patience, like being tired, or has the double meaning of exhaustion or reaching one's limit, one's patience. So that's being sick and tired or something, right? So that's different. So this is more emotional, and one's physical. So that's what sick can do. So it doesn't mean sick, okay? So it's really closer to illness. Okay, all right. Okay, so now so this is all physical stuff, okay, or basic level, what we talk about sickness, okay, sick of sickness, illness, it's a fault and a fault, right? Okay, so yeah, but that's kind of basic. There's a higher level. Once again, there's a higher level. What does that mean? Okay, what's the higher level? All right, so now, okay, right now, additional, just a further understand more of being without fault. That means, it just means without a particular failing, such as a problem is solved and issue is resolved. So that's basic, right? In addition to get rid of illness. Okay. So it just means, so at the very basic level of translation or interpretation, Lao Tzu is talking about, hey, if you recognize that you have a fault, then you can address it. Then you can be without fault, right? Without fault. That's the second half of this phrase. Okay, without fault, right? Now, there's a higher level, and what does that mean? The being fault, or you can say disease or sickness, or in general, it just means it's all the Tao-like characteristics of traits. Anything that does not conform to the Tao. That's what it means. Okay, that's the metaphorical meaning. Specific means it's to not know the Tao, not to attain the one or oneness. That's the specific meaning, higher level meaning. Get it? Okay, so besides being sick or a fault or stuff like that, it just means that from the higher level understanding, it's on the general level, broad level, it just means anything that's non-Tao-like, not Tao-like, or does not conform to the Tao principles, etc. Specifically, it means not to know the Tao. So once you understand this, the whole chapter makes complete sense. Okay. So the higher level of this, of not at fault, at the general level, let me go to the general right here. Okay, at the general level, it just means it's a metaphor for the innate attributes of our true nature, Buddha nature. That is, it's perfect, it's faultless, it's flawless, stainless, and all that stuff. Okay, constant, invariant, self-correct. Okay, so it's basically follows from this. Oh, sorry, from here, from the general case here, from the general, right? And then you just negate it here, right? So it's the same idea. Okay, so it corresponds. So it corresponds. Okay. Now at the specific level, remember here, specifically to be without fault. From the Buddha nature perspective, it's to know the Tao. That is to not know the Tao, right? That here, the fault means to not know the Tao. So if you put a negation, it means to not know the Tao. That means to know the Tao, to know the one, to know the oneness. And that's what the Buddha nature is. The Buddha nature is already the one, or you could say part of the one or whatever. It's already the one. Right? Get it? Okay. So that's to know the Tao. So that's why, sages are without fault. That's the Buddha nature is without fault because it's already with the Tao. I mean, it can also mean that, yeah, it's here. It's Buddha nature is perfect. It is perfect. But that's very general. I mean, it's general, right? This is more general. This is more specific. Okay. All right. Okay. So, all right. So the implication at the general level is that if you do not know your own problems, this is truly a big problem. But if you know your own faults, then these faults could become smaller or could disappear because you could resolve them, right? Because you recognize that they are faults. At the specific level, it just means here it's that to realize that one does not know the Tao, quote unquote, is truly a great fault. Yeah, to understand that, hey, yeah, I don't know about the Tao. I don't know anything about the Tao. Then you can say that's a great flaw or defect or fault. Only then, if you recognize that, then you can begin to, quote, know the Tao, unquote. So now it does not mean being fed up with something as being sick of something. This is why these two words, being, are the most mistranslated of the entire classic. Okay. Now, for example, how to treat a defect as a defect. This is more on the basic level. Let's go to part 2. Okay, here, this is very simple. Okay, treating a defect as a defect. Remember, this phrase means recognizing a fault as a fault, not recognizing a disease as a disease. Doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean sick of being sick either. Okay, I mean, it's closer to recognizing a disease as a disease. I mean, that's closer, or illness as opposed to sick of being sick. Okay, so it's closer to that. But ideally, we want to say fault as a fault. I mean, because we're talking beyond the physical aspect. Okay, so acknowledging a problem is the first step to solving it, obviously, right? Or recognizing it. So what is the number one problem or fault that you see in yourself? So we have to be what? We have to have self-introspection, remember, right? From the previous appendix right here. Okay, lack of clarity, we have to have. So now, is this the same problem or fault that others see in you? Okay, after you self-introspect, you maybe have a list, you could come up with a list. Then you can ask, other people, your friends, your relatives, your family members, your loved ones. Hey, is that what you see in me? The fault. Okay, and then what will you do, if anything, towards solving yourself? Okay, so this is how we treat a defect. These are the basic steps. There could be more, but I'm just generalizing here. All right. So let's go back. We'll get to the juicier details. Okay, so the key is this: at the general level. Oops, sorry. Okay, here at the general level. Where is the general? Okay, right here is only if one sees a fault or problem as a fault or problem, then one can resolve it. So one can be without fault or problem, or the problem would be resolved. So if one knows that there are problems, then one will no longer have problems, right? Because we can resolve them. Because we know what problems to resolve or to solve. If we know our own shortcomings, then after making strenuous efforts to improve oneself or ourselves, then these shortcomings will disappear soon after, or will gradually diminish, right? So whereas if we don't know we have faults or problems, then those faults will continue and they will become bigger. So that's it's important to recognize faults as faults, okay? Or on a physical level, disease as a disease, right? Illness as an illness, okay? But we're talking more on the abstract, the internal, intangible level. Okay, so here's where this becomes the higher level. At the specific meaning the highest level, or the metaphysical aspect, is where to realize that not, quote, knowing the Tao, unquote, is a great flaw. Then one can recognize one's flaws. That's all the non-Tao-like traits. Remember, right? The being, okay? That's the disease, okay? The sickness or the illness, and begin to correct those flaws. And so then be in accord or at one with one's Buddha nature. Okay, so that's the more specific or the higher level understanding of this phrase, okay? Or this line. Second. Okay, let's go to the conclusion. Here we come. Okay, so the sages are without fault because they recognize the fault as a fault, and thus they are without fault. It's kind of like, repeating, right? It does repeat this section here. These last 6 words. Okay, it does repeat. Okay, all right. Okay, and there's a good reason. So it's like, hey, why is he repeating? I know that I can recognize a fault as a fault, and we should correct them. Okay, but it's at the higher level. That's why he's doing this. Okay, so anyway. So on the external level, sages have no faults. That's the people, sages, that enlightened beings or very Tao masters, if you will, have no faults because they recognize their faults. They understand. They know. They're aware that they have faults. So they constantly improve themselves. So sages end up without faults. Okay, so that's one one general. Now, on the physical level, it's this. It does not mean sages do not have illness. Okay, so it doesn't mean that, or sages do not get sick, or sages are sick of things. Some translations are like that, so you got to be careful. All right. So additional understanding is that sages actively work on improving themselves to get rid of their flaws. Okay, so that's what it is. Okay, because they are aware. They're aware and they have self-introspection. So this all starts with the recognition of a problem. This is done through self-reflection or introspection. Likewise, authentic, true, or real Tao cultivators review their own conducts on a regular basis. So here it is that gradually over time, then sages perfect themselves. So it is about being honest with yourself. It is about being humble too, all right? It's the avoidance of self-delusions, including the spiritual cliche that you are already perfect. Okay, so some people, some gurus or teach people that, hey, you're already perfect. So why do you need to improve yourself? Or, you're already perfect. The real you is perfect. Now, see, there's an element of truth to that, but they misapplied it. They confused that with our conscious self, a conscious ego. All right, that's the problem. Okay, they mix the two, and that's where the confusion lies. But the actual authentic Tao is the opposite. It's not talking about the self-delusion of that, that you are already perfect, so there's no need to be perfect. Well, at the basic level, sorry, okay, because you recognize that you still have this conscious self, okay? So if it's your conscious self that's talking, then you're really not perfect, okay? Because conscious self has the yin and yang. It's bound by space-time, okay? So it has those opposites, et cetera, okay? But if it's your Buddha nature speaking, then that's different, okay? But so you can't confuse the two, okay? So why this cliche about already being perfect is an erroneous idea? Okay, let's look at Appendix B, okay? Let's look at Appendix B. Oops, okay. Okay, all right, here. What's wrong with this idea of that you believe you are already perfect? What's wrong? What's wrong with that idea? Okay, what are flaws? I mean, yeah, there are pitfalls, okay? So I have 2 columns. One is you should believe that you are already perfect because of the following reasons. And here's the Tao perspective, okay? So first, 1%. I mean, they're different, but I'm just giving you some of the typical rationales. You believe you are already perfect because you must not feel satisfied about yourself or your life. Yeah, you should not be negative. That's negativity. You should always be positive. You should always be positive, all right? Not dwell on negativity, which is partially correct. It's partially correct. It's not 100% wrong. All of these, none of these are 100% wrong. But anyway, here's what the Tao's perspective is saying. The power of Tao cultivation does not come from dissatisfaction. It should not come from that. The foundation of the Tao cultivation should not come from dissatisfaction. Understand? It should be positive. Ideally, I mean, ideally it should be neither. But it should be it is positive because it comes from your natural, I don't say positive, but it should be at least positive, let's put it that way, at the basic level. But then more advanced level, it comes from your natural tendency to flow towards the best version. Remember, be like water, it's natural, right? It's non-contrived, right? It should be natural. That's the higher level. Okay, it's unattached. Wu-wei, that's the whole idea. It's wu-wei. It's natural. That's another way of saying natural. It's a natural, you have this natural innate quote unquote goodness, or that you want to what? Be a better person, to display that, to show that, to become better. Okay, so that's what it is. Okay, all right. So now the other way is that you should believe you are perfect, you're already perfect, because you should not spend so much energy trying to change things. Just let things flow. Don't meddle, don't interfere in stuff, in the natural flow of things, right? That's partially correct, but it's not, it's once again, it's confused. You're mixing something with something that's not right. Okay, that's not okay. So whereas the transformation of the Tao requires little effort because it is the natural flow. That's where it becomes effortless. That's why we say without effort. Remember, without effort. Okay, so that's the thing. Okay, because that's the real Tao. Okay, that because it comes from your Buddha nature. Remember. We talked about, I think it's in chapter 48. No, not chapter 48. Chapter 20 or 22. Remember, we said the flow state be in the zone, everything is effortless. Like you become one with the activity, right? You don't think about doing it. You are it, and yet, you're not doing anything. Yeah, it seems like you're not doing it. But anyway, okay, so it's like that. Okay, that's the highest level. Okay, the other one is you should not compare yourself against other people. That's true too, right? We talk about that, right? That in the Tao, yeah, we should not compare. The mind of comparison is wrong. That's true. Differentiation, right? Because then that's part of the four 四象, right? The four marks, right? One of them is you compare to other people. Okay, so that's right. That's true. You should not. Okay. So that's what I'm saying. This is partially correct. But here's what the Tao perspective is saying is this: Tao cultivators, it's true, do not compare to other people. But what they do compare their present selves against their past selves, not against other people. Get it? So to see if they progressed, or am I still stagnant, or I'm still the same place where I was. Okay. So that's the difference. Okay. All right. Now, also believing you are perfect makes you happy no matter what. Now, at the extreme, it becomes ignorance is bliss. At the extreme. Okay. But believing that you are perfect makes you happy no matter what. Right. Yeah. So, you have to be positive in life, right? You have to have a positive view on life, so you have to think that you're perfect or believe that you're perfect, even though it may not be really true. Okay, so that's kind of like self-delusion. Okay, or not, or being dishonest, or your ego. That's arrogance. Okay, so whereas the Tao perspective is that true happiness comes from the awareness that you are making meaningful progress. You are on that journey of life. Remember that sacred journey of life, that you are reaching your goal or the ultimate destination or whatever. Okay, so that's where the true happiness comes from. Okay, not believing that you are already perfect. Get it? Okay, so that's the potential flaws of this idea, this erroneous idea that I'm already perfect. Get it? So we got to be careful. All right. So just be aware of that. Okay, now let's go to what is this? Appendix. What's this? Appendix B, right? No, is this Appendix B? Yes. Okay. So let's go back. We're almost at the conclusion now, so just bear with me a little bit. I'm a little bit running over. Okay, where am I? Okay, so the deeper understanding is this. Sorry. On the external or tangible level is this. Sages, people, the Tao masters or enlightened beings are without fault because they attained the oneness or the unity. That's the being at one with the Tao. That's to hold the J. Remember chapter 70? So they are in accord or congruent with the Tao and are thus without fault. That is not flawed in, quote, not knowing the Tao, unquote. Get it? So while appearing as ordinary people, that's the wearing the old plain clothes. Okay, so that's the deeper understanding. The higher understanding, the more intangible aspect, that's the internal side, is our Buddha nature. That's the sage within us, right? It's already at one or in oneness or unity with the Tao. So it is naturally perfect, faultless, flawless, unblemished. So that's without fault also, right? Remember, this definition of this fault also means what's not what's the non-Tao-like traits or characters, right? Flaws. So not without that means without fault. It means you're perfect. While our Buddha nature appears as in a human form. I should say in a human form, but doesn't matter. Okay, so anyway, right? So the Buddha nature is intangible, right? It's intangible, but we could see each other, right, as a human form, but we know that we have a Buddha nature inside, right, within. That's a sage within. Okay, all right. So the implication is this: on the tangible side, okay, sages are faultless because they recognize a fault as a fault, since they know those habits that do not conform to the Tao. They already recognize this problem and thus are able to correct the problem, so they become faultless. Likewise, Tao cultivators have turned our gaze inward with introspection or self-reflection. Okay, on the intangible level, okay, the Buddha nature is perfect. It's flawless because it's already at one or in oneness with the Tao. Okay, it's part of the Tao. Okay, so the key is this. We're at the conclusion. I'm sorry here. Okay, right here. Okay, so sages are without fault because they see a fault for what it really is. So they are constantly improving themselves through self-reflection or introspection. Thus, sages end up without fault. So that's what this very basic, external, superficial level meaning of this last phrase means. Okay. Then on the internal level, okay, but there's an internal aspect too, and that's this. That's our sage within, the Buddha nature is faultless because it is already at one or in unity or oneness with the Tao. So the Buddha nature is, of course, flawless. Now, this points out a key point where sages, the Buddha nature, are without fault, or the Buddha nature is flawless because they, quote, know the Tao, unquote. That's to attain the one or at one with the Tao. This connects to the first line. Ooh, okay, first line, just a lot. Okay, this connects to the first line where to know what that you do not know is the highest, which is to know the Tao, quote unquote, to quote, know the Tao, unquote. That's to attain the one without showing, claiming, thinking to know it. This is the highest level of quote, knowing, unquote, which is being in oneness or unity with the Tao. That's to quote, know the Tao, unquote. Without effort, without thinking, without remembering, without conscious knowing, without any cognitive processes, without abiding in it. Okay, whereby, quote, not attaining the one, unquote, that's not being oneness to the Tao, that's to not know the Tao, quote unquote, while claiming you have or are with the Tao, that's to know the Tao, quote unquote. That's a flaw, right? Because you are not with the Tao, but yet you claim you are. That's a definite flaw. That's to not know, but think you know is flaw. Okay, so that's the higher level meaning, or the more metaphysical side. Okay, so where only by recognizing that one does, quote, not know the Tao, unquote, is truly a great flaw or defect, is to realize that one is not at one or in oneness or in unity with the Tao. That's to does not know the Tao, quote unquote. Okay, so that's only by recognizing faults as faults. That's the higher level interpretation. Then can one begin to, quote, know the Tao, unquote. That's to attain the one or oneness and be in accord with one's Buddha nature. So then one can be without fault. Okay, so on the external level, where sages are faultless because they see fault for what they really are. So they constantly improve themselves, and thus sages are without fault. On the internal level, our Buddha nature, the sage within, is perfect. It's flawless because it's already at one, right, with the Tao. This is because, externally speaking, okay, sages, quote, know the Tao, unquote, but do not claim or display or think of knowing it. This is the highest level of, quote, knowing the Tao, unquote. That is beyond conscious or intellectual knowledge. That is neither a priori nor a posteriori. A posteriori, that's deductive or inductive knowledge. Okay, so it's neither that. Okay, this is the metaphysical Tao of Tao. Okay, that is unknowable and not unknowable, but we can realize it once again in the highest unsurpassed state of the awareness. Now, on the internal level, okay, Okay, the self nature or the Buddha nature is already at one or in oneness with the Tao without abiding in it. That's without that means non-conditioned, wu wei, or natural. It's naturally at one, okay, with the Tao. This is why on the external side, sages are without fault. That is, they quote know the Tao, unquote. And internally, the Buddha nature or the sage within is without fault. That's flawless. Okay, so I'm sorry I went a little bit over, but takes about 70 minutes or so. Okay, so this concludes chapter 71. So it's a short chapter, but there's the very high level metaphysical side to it. So as you can tell. So anyway, all right. So hopefully this gives you a better understanding of this chapter. The rest of the okay. So if there are things that I said that are wrong, I ask for the Buddha's and Lao Tzu's guidance, forgiveness, and everybody's guidance. Thank you.